For a season and a half, we have seen every corner of the West. Now, it's time to head east. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Thumb Together TV. My name is Andrew Fantasia, and we're talking about Westworld Season 2, Episode 5, Akane No Mai. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. So, first of all, what does Akane No Mai mean? Well, according to about 7 Google searches I had to do, it's Japanese for the dance of Akane. And Akane is the name of a new character that we meet in this episode, but we'll get to her in a little bit. Because, guys, we saw Shogun World. We saw Shogun World finally. It's been teased to us over a year ago, and does it live up to the expectations? I think it surpasses them. The Edo period of Japan makes for really exciting movies, you know, classic Kurosawa films, but to me, the structure of that time period is a little less interesting than the structure of the Raj or the Wild West. So I wasn't sure how they were going to make this park pop, how they were going to make it stand out, how they were going to make it unique. And they made it unique by not making it unique. And again, I'll get to that later. Of course, I should mention this is going to be full of spoilers. So if you don't want anything spoiled for you, and I end up spoiling something for you, please don't hunt me down with one of these and seek out vengeance, because I warned your ass. Now, the episode begins in this not too distant future. It's the farthest ahead that we've ever jumped, where now the cleanup crew has drained the lake, or they're starting to drain the lake, and they're slowly pulling all the bodies of all those hosts out of the lake to try and determine what it was that happened to them. And poor Bernard / Teddy, perhaps, is just standing there staring at all these bodies and not really saying anything. Now, the character, I forgot his name by now because we haven't seen him since the pilot, but the character who's played by Fares, he was reporting to his boss about what they found in that lake, and according to him, a whole third of the hosts that they discovered in that lake had totally empty CPUs. So those were pure, fresh, virgin hosts, he called them. They had nothing. They had no experiences whatsoever. They were blank husks, essentially, which is very odd. And that's just another mystery, another question to stack on top of all these questions, which is, why were a whole third of those hosts devoid of any experience? And of course, if Bernard's got the answers, he's not telling anybody. He's just being very quiet about it. And the episode does something interesting throughout that I want to point out. This is the only time we see Bernard and the only time we see the future. And they've done in the past this season, whenever Bernard is remembering things or his memory is doing weird shit, instead of a simple quick cut, they'll do a cut to black first, almost like a normal TV show would when there's a commercial. Now, of course, this is HBO, there are no commercials, but we still get a lot of those strange cuts to black. It looks literally like there are pieces missing from the episode because of that, because like I said, this is not a commercialized show. So that, I feel, is not an accident. This is something to do with Bernard's memory, with the memories of the hosts in general. I don't know what it could possibly mean, other than maybe a lot of the stuff being remembered is shared by the hosts, and we'll get to that later. But in the meantime, that's still a big question for me, is what was the deal with all the cuts to black during this episode? So Delores and Teddy, they finally arrive at Sweetwater, just like they promised they would, and there is just calamity. There's dead bodies everywhere. Like I guessed, Delores wants that train. I knew it. So she goes up to the train and she's like, strip the train, you know, make sure it's got no excess junk on it. I want it to run as fast as possible. Now we're going to get the train. We're going to take off. And I'm like, okay. So there, she's going after her dad and she wants the train because it's got the speed. Then we get some interesting dialogue between her and Teddy where they reminisce about the good old days when they were just hosts living their loops and talking about raising cattle. We know that she saw him spare Craddock's life back at the fort. So she's been disappointed with that this whole time. But we don't know that she's 100% disappointed. We don't know how she feels. She's been kind of, you know, very blank-faced about it. And they have these great little talks, and she tells him about this group of cattle that they used to have, and a couple of them came down with a contagious disease, and they couldn't fix it, so her dad took those sick cattle into a barn and he burned them. And she asked Teddy, what would you have done in that situation? He says, well, I would have sequestered them from the rest and put them inside where they would have been safe, waited for them to get better. And that right there, that conversation showed the inherent difference between Delores and Teddy, whereas she has become this figurehead who is, you know, she doesn't have time for mercy. at this point. Mercy gets in the way of progress, and it gets in the way of efficiency, whereas Teddy would sacrifice both those things for the sake of doing the right thing. So it's during this conversation that Delores realizes Teddy is not pulling his weight as far as she's concerned with her very aggressive new Wyatt campaign that she's blazing across Westworld. So for the first time ever, as far as we know, Delores and Teddy finally do the deed. We get some sexy times happening in there. And I say as far as we know because I'm pretty sure, unless there's something happening off screen, I'm pretty sure that Delores and Teddy were never programmed to actually get sexual together because, I don't know why the park would bother programming that. They're programmed to flirt and to be in love, and then the guests are supposed to come in and intervene with that however they see fit. But I don't think there was anything in the stories per se that end with Delores and Teddy, just getting hot and heavy and having a roll in the hay. I don't think that was ever part of Lee's storylines. So the fact that they did that shows that it's just another great example of how free they're becoming and how they're breaking out of the constraints of the park. But then some tragedy strikes. She wakes him up in the middle of the night and she's like, come here, I got something to show you. And that's where we learn that Delores is really, really not having it when it comes to Teddy's merciful outlook on life. And she's got her creepy Wyatt people there with their half faces and everything. And then she's like, hold them down. And they hold down Teddy. And that tech guy that they captured back when they went into the belly of the park, he comes in the room and she orders this guy to reprogram Teddy to make him more aggressive, to make him more suitable to what it is she's trying to accomplish. And that's the last we see of them. Teddy is held against his will. He's struggling. He's like, no, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. And the guy's like, well, here we go. And he changes the programming. Delores has made a lot of very interesting choices this season, but this to me is the most eyebrow raising of them because Teddy has been the one rock in her life, the one person who has been steadfast and devoted and completely sincere with her throughout all of this. I mean, he has never once been dishonest. Partially because it's part of his programming, but also partially because he's just that kind of guy. He's a nice dude. The only time he ever really disobeyed anything or went against the grain was when he spared Craddock's life the last time we saw him. So his own inherent goodness is interfering with what Delores feels to be progress. She's not taking that sitting down. So next time we see Teddy, we're in for a very different Teddy. Now, this could very well lead into the whole theory that Teddy did in fact kill all those people and then switch bodies with Bernard. He says when he sees the bodies in the lake, oh my god, I killed them all. That sounds like something this new Teddy might want to end up doing. But now it's all a matter of, does this backfire on Delores? And I think it will. I think that the aggro nature that she's going to instill in him, it's going to be a double-edged sword. It's going to give her what she wants, but it's going to cause a lot more trouble for her later down the line. But we'll get back to Delores in a minute because I think I know why you're all here, why we're all excited, and it has to do with this thing that's been sitting patiently on my lap for this whole recording. We finally saw Shogun World, baby, and it is too legit to quit. We're introduced to the beautiful world of Shogun World. Right off the bat, we learn something absolutely amazing about it. And this, again, I have to give full props to the writers and creators of the show because I did not expect this in the slightest. But you know what? This is exactly how you do it. Turns out, Shogun World is essentially a more extreme version of Westworld. According to Lee Sizemore, when guests find that Westworld is a bit too tame, they get recommended to the Shogun World Park where things are a lot more chaotic and there are many more chances of blood being spilled. And to really hammer home just how much this is a Westworld 2.0 kind of situation, we get one of the most beautiful, cool, and actually funny sequences of the whole season, the bank robbery. It's the exact bank robbery from the Mariposa that we've seen a couple times way back in episode 1, except it's done this time, again, almost recreated shot for effing shot in Shogun World with Shogun World counterparts of the characters that we already know. This is one of the coolest damn things that this show has ever done. They just keep topping themselves. We finally meet Hiroyuki Sanada's character. He's playing a guy named Musashi, who is a Ronin. And this actor, you've seen him before. He's in a bunch of things. He was on Lost. He was in The Last Samurai. And he's going to be in John Wick 3. And apparently he's going to be in Avengers 4. So moral of the story is Hiroyuki Sanada's agent is off the hook. And also because Hiroyuki Sanada is a very, very talented man, and anybody would be lucky to have him because he does a great job in everything he's in, and this is no exception. He plays this really cool Ronin character. He's dangerous, but he's also, you can tell he's a good guy, and he is the Shogun World equivalent of Hector. how Hector is this dangerous outlaw with the black leather and everything. Musashi is the Shogun World outlaw / Ronin with a black gi, and his gi even has some leather pieces on it to make it even more similar to what Hector wears. Even though warriors back in Edo, Japan didn't really wear pieces of leather on them. This was just, this was a liberty that the showrunners took, but that's fine. And Musashi shows up with his crew of bandits, one of whom, Hanairo, is an exact mirror image of Armistice. She is, she's the right-hand woman to this bank robber. She's very dangerous. She's deadly with a bow and arrow. And she's even got a tattoo running across her face, except hers is a dragon, not a snake. So we get that cool dichotomy as well. And then, of course, we get the Shogun World version of Maeve, a geisha named Akane. And Akane is, of course, the woman referenced in the title, the dance of Akane, Akane No Mai. And Akane's got the same kind of thing going on. She's this very honorable woman. She's running this establishment where she's got these geishas working underneath her, and she takes care of them all. She doesn't let anybody talk smack about them or hurt them or anything. And then along comes the shogun's messenger, and he's like, oh, we want Sakura because she's your sexiest dancer, or the shogun wants her for his harem or what have you. And Akane's not having that, just the same way that Maeve wouldn't have had it if somebody had tried that shit with Clementine back in Westworld. So all these little parallels are happening. And when that whole bank robbery sequence goes down and it's reenacted almost shot for shot, it's so cool and it's so beautiful, but it does the job of revealing layers of Westworld and revealing how the park is created. Because Maeve approaches Lee about it later, and she's like, you plagiarized our entire life. And he's like, I didn't plagiarize it, that all came from me. I just kind of copy-pasted stuff that worked and tweaked it for this different setting. He has this great line, which was funny, but it makes perfect sense. He said, you try writing 300 stories in a month. We really get that sense that Lee was under this time constraint, so he cobbled together as much as he could, and from it, he branched off into these different parts of these different parks. And it works. And now, now we're all asking the question, do the other parks have similar doppelgangers of characters we already know? I don't know if Raj World has something like that going on, if there's a Maeve in Raj World, but if this is the case, the opportunities we could have to have all these doppelgangers meet each other and form, different alliances and create different relationships. I want to see what that's like now. Who's the Delores of Shogun World? Who's the Teddy? Who's the Maeve of Park 3? What is Park 3? We don't know yet. Again, every little piece of information, every little piece of story they tell is just like a flower opening, and now you have all these other petals you can look at, and you're like, oh, now what's this going to be? What's that going to be like? But that's not even the biggest game changer in the episode, of course. I mean, you should know by now, it's Westworld. We have more than one game changer per hour, and what we got this time was a ninja attack. It's like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they weren't teenagers as far as I can tell. They weren't mutants, and most of them were human, but they were ninjas, and they snuck into the geisha building. I'm sure there's a proper name for that building, but I don't know what it is. The ninjas all started attacking the geishas because they wanted to kidnap Sakura, and they did. But before that happened, we got this really cool ninja / cowboy / samurai battle. This is like every 10-year-old boy's dream come true, by the way. Where was this show 20 years ago? During the ninja fight, Maeve is using her normal powers to vocally, get people off her back. All she has to do is speak Japanese, unfortunately, because nobody speaks English in Shogun World, but as long as she speaks Japanese, she can control the other hosts, just like she can in the Westworld park. However, she gets in this fight with this crazy ninja, and he's cutting off the circulation to her throat. She can't speak. So how does she get out of it? Well, she ends up controlling him, but not through words. She does it all mentally, and you can hear her voice start to whisper through his head, and she commands him to kill himself, and he does. And for the rest of the episode, Maeve starts getting a reputation throughout Shogun World as a witch. They refer to her as a witch, like she's got some kind of magic powers. I took to referring to it as a Jedi Maeve trick, because that's exactly what it looks like. From a technological standpoint, how does this work? How does this Jedi Maeve trick work? And I think what's going on here, pretty sure, this might sound like it's oversimplifying it, but I think this is what's happening. Because she is a computer. Computers, for the most part, all speak the same language. If she has attained enough control over her own computer brain, it stands to reason that she can transmit the same control to other similar computer brains. Maybe it's within a radius, maybe she can't do it from across like 100 miles or something, but if, they're all in the same room as her, they're all sharing the same space, maybe she can do that the same way that my phone can, give me a notification and my computer can give me the same notification. Maybe she can use that ability with other hosts in her vicinity and just be like, hey, don't hurt me, and it can translate. And if that's the case, then she has just become the most powerful character on the entire show. If she can mentally control all of these hosts, again, I don't know what the limits of this power are, but if she can lead a hypothetical army of Shogun warriors with a thought, she's essentially become a hive mind, and that's a very dangerous thing. Thankfully, though, her intentions seem to be on the noble side, even though she is very cutthroat and she doesn't take no crap from anybody. In this episode, we learned a very important lesson, and that is that there is an inherent difference between Maeve and Delores, in that Maeve has a certain sense of honor and decency to her, while Delores just goes for the throat. That is summed up perfectly with what they do to their fellow hosts. Maeve has that conversation with Akane and starts sort of describing what she can do, and Akane's aware that she's got the Jedi Maeve trick thing going on, and they both are pretty much the same character. So Maeve has the idea, get her on my side, let me wake her up, because she hasn't really been woken up yet. She doesn't know she's a robot. And Maeve starts to sort of trickle those things into her mind, and Akane resists it. She's like, no, whatever you're doing, it's making me uncomfortable, please stop. And Maeve backs off. She's like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. Dolores does not respect that same freedom of choice. Dolores holds Teddy against his will and says, Teddy, I'm going to change the way you think so it's more like how I think, whether you like it or not. Teddy has no say in the matter. He's struggling, but he has no choice, unlike Akane. And that speaks volumes. Not only about the show, but it says so much about people in general and the way people expect, they force their beliefs on you, whereas others will respect your own freedom to believe what you choose to believe. That is so fascinating because from the beginning of the show, Delores was this very wholesome character. We assumed she was the hero of the show, and Maeve was more of an anti-hero. She was, this sort of like badass lady who was, not a villain, but she was very cutthroat and she would kill anybody who got in her way. And now it seems that's starting to pull an about face, and Maeve has become this more merciful person, a better leader, whereas Delores is just like, if you don't think the way I think, you will, or you're dead, get out of my way. And that shift in the tones of these two women is fascinating. And it only makes it more fascinating because I think we can all say it's safe to assume that they are going to meet again in the future. And if this whole story, if everything boils down to this big battle between Dolores' people and Maeve's people, I can only imagine what the conversations between those two women would be like, because at this point they are just these powerful titans in this world, and their worldviews are so different that alone is going to create a lot of clashing and a lot of very interesting dynamics. So I can't wait to see where that goes. But that's what I took away from this episode, is that Maeve is giving people a choice to join her crew, whereas Delores is forcing others into it. Delores is much more of a dictator. And that poor dancer Sakura, who's basically the Clementine of Shogun World, she gets killed by this Shogun, and Akane takes it upon herself to do something insane, and she does her little dance, and as soon as she gets close enough to the Shogun, she cuts that man's face open like he's a Pez dispenser. When you see him next in the background, he's like, this is like his jaw, and this is the rest of his head, and it's just like flopping like that. That was brutal, man. That was about as violent as this show has ever gotten. Shogun World is a very bloody, brutal place. Like Lee said, it is just much more extreme than Westworld ever was. But what's important to take away from this final scene is that Akane is now on board with Maeve's people by her own freedom of choice. And Maeve makes this really great statement that says to me, it looks like she is going to start leading the rest of the Shogun's army, basically become the new Shogun with her Jedi Maeve trick. Is that the case? Is that what she is planning to do? If you have as many enemies out to get you as Maeve and the rest of the hosts do, I think having a Shogun army at your back would be a pretty good thing, especially considering that we know there's a cleanup crew eventually going to be on its way. It's just a matter of if Charlotte can get Abernathy out in time. Because now that's a whole race, because Delores is after them too. At the end of the day, Akane no Mai shifted the world and shifted the balance of power. Most importantly, it shifted these two characters of Delores and Maeve from one extreme to the other, and they've become completely different people from the people that we met way back in episode 1, at least more so Delores. But now that we have seen the potential that Shogun World holds and the potential that all the parks hold for this doppelganger situation, I personally cannot wait for more of that. We've got a whole other week ahead of us until we find out more. Until then, I think I'm just going to while away the time rewatching that Shogun World bank robbery sequence, because man, everything about that was beautiful, down to like the reuse of Paint It Black just with like the Asian flute and the Asian instruments. It was just 100% mind boggling. So that has been Akane no Mai. This is Thumb Together TV. Thank you so much for watching this crazy spoiler review of our first real glimpse into the world of Shogun World. Now, I don't know about you, but I want to watch some Kurosawa movies like right now. This just put me in the mood. I'll see you here next week as we delve into all the other crazy secrets this amazing show has to offer. I'm Andrew Fantasia, and until next time, these violent delights have violent ends. I was going to try to learn how to say that in Japanese, to fit the whole theme, but then I was like, that's not going to happen.